Manifest. It's fair to say I'm a little late to the gate on this show, given that it's about halfway through now its final season, but I've finally got season 1, I've sat down, I watched it through, and I think it's a pretty good show, at least from season 1 at least. Now, it's fair to say I'm mainly going to this show because I recognise Josh Dallas. Josh Dallas is a weird one for me. I mean, the things I'm mainly known for, I know he was in the first Thor movie before he was later replaced by Zachary Levi for the sequels. He was in Once Upon a Time, of course, playing Prince Charming, and he even had a small guest role or a cameo in an episode of Doctor Who in 2008. Sounds at the library. Go and see if you can spot him. But anyway, I got into the show because of him, and I do think it's quite a good show. As I said, I'm a bit late, given that they're about halfway through their final season now, but I think it's an interesting show. For the basic premise of Manifest, let me fill you in. The group of people coming back from Jamaica to New York on a flight. However, because the flight's overbooked, some of them get booked onto a later flight, Flight 828. And everyone who boards Flight 828, they take off in 2013, but then when they eventually land, they find out it's 2018. They pass through some turbulence and a minor storm, and have now seemingly jumped 5 years. And so the show is basically the characters trying to find a way to reintegrate themselves into their lives, and then finding out it's not quite as easy as they first thought. Now, the show mainly focuses around a family called the Stones. You got Ben Stone, played by Josh Dallas, his sister Michaela, played by Melissa Roxburgh, Ben's wife, Grace Stone, played by Athena Karkaris, and their 2 children, Olive and Cal. Now, the thing is, when they were in Jamaica and heading off on the flight, Ben, Michaela, and Cal decided to take the later flight, whereas Grace and Olive chose to go on the first flight. And one of the things they now have to deal with is, because they jumped 5 years, before they set off, Cal and Olive were twins. However, because they now jumped 5 years, Cal is still 10 years old and Olive is 15. They're no longer twins. And as I said, it's mainly a show about trying to reintegrate yourself, and the question is, how easy is it to re-pick up a life where you left off? The answer, not easy at all. I mean, as for one, Ben has to deal with the fact that he now has a teenage daughter. The other thing is, it turns out that in those 5 years, Grace partially moved on. I mean, she didn't fully move on. Like, she didn't get remarried again, but she has been seeing a new guy called Danny, and Olive has come to care for Danny. And Luna Blaze, who plays Olive, she, I think, does a really great job showing someone who wants to still accept her dad, but then has formed a bond with somebody else who was there for her. And I think they do very well with it. Now, it's not only the Stones that they focus on. There's also, of course, Michaela, Ben's younger sister, who is a cop at the NYPD, and she has also got problems of her own. Because just before they took off, before they had gone to Jamaica, she had been proposed to by her boyfriend, Jared Vasquez, a fellow cop played by J.R. Ramirez. And when they were on the plane, she was sending him a text saying that she accepts his marriage proposal. Only when they land, they find out that in the 5 years that they've been missing, he has moved on and has gotten married to Michaela's best friend Lourdes, played by Victoria Cartagena. And that's the thing, trying to pick up pieces of your life, but then your fiancé is no longer your fiancé and has moved on. And I think they do a really good job of showing tension with that. But the other characters who we mainly focus on are Sanvi Bal, a doctor played by Parveen Kaur, who just before she had boarded the plane, she had been working on a cancer treatment, like a new form of cancer treatment that she thought could do very well. Upon landing there 5 years later, she finds out that her work has been revolutionary. They've implemented it into most of hospitals, and it is helping a load of people. But then she also finds bureaucracy can get in the way, because with the stones, it turns out, well, no, it didn't turn out, they knew from the start that Cal had cancer. That's one of the reasons they had gone to Jamaica, just to have a family holiday with everyone there. And now when they've come back, they've discovered this revolutionary new cancer treatment, but people at first in charge say, actually, we can't give it to him. Well, why not? Well, he's outside the parameters of the study, he's outside the age cutoff, so we can't really give it to him. And obviously, Sanvi is upset that she got into the field of medicine because she wanted to help people, and now bureaucracy is getting in her way. But it's not only the small stuff that the passengers have to deal with, as they are approached by the NSA, who seemingly have dark plans, and when other passengers start to go missing, the passengers also start to develop what they call callings, like they experience visions or hear certain things that eventually lead them to various people. I mean, at first they believe they can do some good with it. I mean, Michaela uses it to track down 2 children who have been kidnapped. But then as the series goes on and they start to look more and more into it, they realise that the government may actually be looking for them and may actually want to experiment on them. And most of the time, Josh Dallas's character, Ben, he is just doing all of this in the service of his son. Like, he wants his son to be safe. He wants his son to have the best possible life, even though he has cancer. He wants him to live for as long as possible. And they do manage to do some great stuff with it. I mean, Robert Vance, one of the characters played by Darrell Edwards, while he starts off as somewhat of an antagonist as director of the NSA, when he eventually sees what's going on, he actually becomes a somewhat ally, and that's pretty good. There's also another played by Tim Moriarty, who plays Tim Powell, the deputy director, who, once again at the start, he starts off as something of an antagonist, but then after Vance's death at one point, he eventually joins as well. And what the show does very well for season 1 is showing that it's not black is bad and white is good, it's all speckled with shades of grey. I mean, one of the characters who they end up encountering is another passenger named Autumn Cox, played by Shirley Rumerick, who seemingly is working with kind of the bad guys, and then when they ultimately question as to why she's doing this, why she's coming after them, she goes, because shortly before we got on the plane, I lost my daughter. She went into foster care, and I just want to see her again. And even that, you can understand why she's doing it. She is shown as a character who is doing all of this to care for someone she loves and to be able to see someone she loves again. And they all do it very well. But then, as I said, they also show that it's not quite as simple as they thought. I mean, while they thought at first that, so the passengers who have been experiencing this, they seem to discover that other people as well are seemingly experiencing this miracle. For example, they encounter a man named Zeke Landon, played by Matt Long, who wasn't on the plane but also experienced a similar type of thing. He became lost in a cave and then emerged 1 year later. But then they also have some really great kind of villains or antagonists, like James Griffin, played by Mark Menchaca, who's a criminal who murdered people, but then when he manages to survive drowning in a van, a getaway van, he also has a vision, but then uses it for his own gain to basically say to the police, I'll tell you where the bomb is. I'll tell you where to stop a bomb if you'll let me go free. And they have a bit of a moral quandary. It's like, do we let this person who's a convicted murderer walk just to be able to save more people? Does the greater good outweigh the bad? And they also set up the kind of big villain for the show of the Major, Catherine Fitz, played by Elizabeth Marvel, who I gather was built upon in later seasons. But For the first season, I think they do a really good job of setting up the mystery of Flight 828 and what ultimately happened, and I do think it's a show that maybe I will continue with. We'll see. But anyway, there's my quick little thoughts on the first season of Manifest from 2018. Hope you enjoyed it. Anyway, until next time, see ya.